See everyone connecting to audio. See, hi everyone. Whoever can hear me, hello. Oh, hey Katie, it's good to see you, a fellow Center for Plain Language person.
Good to see you too.
So we'll just ask everyone to keep themselves on mute to start with.
Great.
I see that, Maria, there's someone in the waiting room. We can let them in. There we go.
Great.
And what do you think? Give a couple of minutes or?
Yeah, we'll give it maybe a minute or so and see if some other folks join us. And then we can kick it off. Yeah.
Mm. You sure my phone is turned off?
Yeah, I'm checking the same thing. It's funny, my phone is always on silent, and yet I always feel the need to triple check.
Okay. All right, what do you think, Grace? Should we
I
just
think
get
let's do
started?
it. Let's do it. That's
All
great.
righty, sounds good.
Okay, well, hello everyone. We're so glad you're here. My name is Grace Aldridge Foster, and I'm really excited to welcome you to this workshop, along with my co-presenter, Sabrina Kurtz-Rossi. We are very excited to talk about why and how investigators and research teams should be using plain language today. And we're really excited to hear from you a lot throughout this session as well. It won't just be us talking the whole time, and we can't wait to hear from you. So here is a quick overview of how we'll spend our hour together today. I already know it's going to go by really quickly. So first, just in just a minute, Sabrina will kind of invite you to discuss how you've used plain language already and introduce yourselves. We'll give a bit more information about our own work with plain language as well and the perspectives that we bring to this session. And then I'll spend some time on the plain language landscape and the core tenets to help set us up for our breakout room activity and discussion about AI and plain language. And I'm very excited to hear what you all have to say about that activity. I feel like in our planning conversations for this session, Sabrina and I both are very interested in actively learning about this ourselves. So I'm really excited for the exchange that we'll have in the second half of the session. So I'll hand it over to Sabrina for a little bit.
Great, thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody. We do want to start by getting to know you a little bit. We're going to use the chat box quite a bit as making this an interactive session. As Grace said, there'll be some didactic presentation of some foundational information, but also we're hoping that'll stimulate some ideas and thoughts. And we do have an opportunity to work in the breakout group. So to begin, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, I'd love to know where you are in addition to kind of who you are, because this online opportunity for people all over the world to potentially join. So let us know who you are, where you are. You're interested in where you work, but most importantly, how do you use plain language? If you're using it already, how so? So how do you use plain language? And this way, everyone will all get to meet you via chat. Let's see. Take a moment. And I should be seeing some responses. Oh, Marianne Abrams. Hi, Marianne. A longtime colleague. Grace already recognized a few of your colleagues and friends. Okay, great. Esther, a librarian, great. I'm sure this is a very diverse group of participants because plain language can be, and health literacy in general, it really is multidisciplinary. Let's see, Joe is in Oregon using plain language to customize patient education materials. We've got Peg, who's undergraduate in undergraduate nursing program. Wonderful. Let's see, George also from the is that the National Network of Libraries of Medicine? Diana, welcome. Oh, Katie from the Center for Health Literacy. That's Grace. You had mentioned saying hello to Katie. Great. All right. Well, I will keep an eye on the chat box. We've got Sandy from Communicate Health. Wonderful. There was a shout out in the last session to your group, doing some great work around key information on informed consents. All right. Wonderful. Well, we'll keep an eye on the chat box. I also want to say that I will be, Katie and I do a lot of Grace and I do a lot of training and online and in person. And so we'll be interacting with you through the chat box throughout the session. So with that, I think I'll hand it back to you, Grace.
Great. Thank you, Sabrina. It's so interesting watching even just these short descriptions of the work that you do in the chat box. It's like I want to have a conversation with every single one of you to hear more. Okay, so I wanted to share just a little bit about my work with plain language and how I ended up here. And Sabrina will do the same. And so, I think that because I work with one of these plain language organizations, I assume that everyone doing plain language work knows them, but I have learned that that is not the case. So there are kind of three primary organizations that do plain language work: the Center for Plain Language, Clarity, and Plain. And then together, delegates from all three formed the International Plain Language Federation, which worked to establish a set of international plain language standards out earlier this year called the ISO standard. And I got into the plain language world when I began volunteering for the Center for Plain Language. My team at my business and I volunteer for the Federal Plain Language Report Card every year, as well as the Clear Mark Awards. Through the report card, we give federal agencies feedback on their plain language efforts over the previous year. And then through the Clear Marks, we give organizations in all industries feedback and reward the best plain language submissions. So I sort of build on that work. I run a writing skills training business called Bold Type. And in addition to training teams on better email writing, presentation slides, editing skills, that kind of thing, we teach many organizations about plain language and in a really wide array of industries. I think there's this myth, I'll talk about this again later, but there's kind of this myth that plain language is just for government. I know that if you're here, you know that that's not just the case, of course, but I think it's been really interesting and eye-opening to me, and actually really encouraging to me to see companies in all of these different industries who are trying to make their content easier for users to understand. So it's a lot of fun doing this work with a lot of different types of teams. And Sabrina, if you want to talk about your work a little bit.
Yes, great. So my name is Sabrina Kurtz-Rossi. I'm a health literacy practitioner, also a health literacy, or I should say research specialist with the Center for Health Literacy at Tufts Medicine now. I must say that plain language is my happy place. I draw on my experience as a practitioner and the research I do to kind of inform my workshops and trainings. This is one of them, and I just have 3 examples of, like I said, my happy place when I'm doing plain language writing. One is creating plain language slides about rare diseases for patient education programming. This is all just like in the past year. Disseminating research results in plain language. Some of you may be doing this. This research was specifically on the health effects of breathing ultrafine particles and air pollution for people who live close to highways, busy highways. And some of my present research is looking at how to apply plain language principles to writing the key information section on informed consents, which there was an oral session on that just just before this session. So that's a little background on me. All right, Grace, back to you.
All right, so I'm going to move into kind of the presentation portion of this. I know that, again, many of you are already plain language practitioners, but we wanted to start with a little bit of a refresher. It can never hurt to have a little bit of a refresher. So according to the plain language guidelines, the point of plain language is this. It helps organizations make sure that their users can find what they need, understand what they find, and use what they find to meet their needs. And plain language was, of course, originally created to help the public read, understand, and use government communications, but it's an incredibly helpful system for users of all types of content. And something that surprised me when I first started working with plain language is that there are a number of definitions for plain language floating around, right? And there's not necessarily one that is more correct than the others, but this is my favorite. Plain language is communication that your audience can understand the first time they read or hear it. It shouldn't require, multiple rounds of rereading in order to comprehend it. People should be able to comprehend it right away. And the most common misconception I hear about plain language is that it's just about using simple words and sentences, right? It's just about making your sentences clear and easy to read. And yes, of course, it is about that. That's a huge part of plain language. And we'll do, I'll warm up your chat box fingers a little bit by testing this out really quickly. So take a look at this sentence and write your plain language rewrite in the chat box, and let's see what you come up with. Take a few seconds to do this. I love that the first 3 responses were down. We're down to 4-word rewrites, Yeah, I love watching these come in. Check the right answer, Marianne. Choose the best solution, George. Tracy, very similar. Choose the best answer, the best match, Esther. Yeah. One thing that I love about plain language is all of your rewrites are just a little bit different, and they're all so much better than the original, right? So I think that's one of my favorite things about the system is it's not about some, perfect version, one single correct version that we all should be working towards. It's just how can we make what we've written easier? There are always a number of different ways to do that. And the goal is just progress, right? This is great. I love reading these rewrites. And of course, my rewrite is not better than yours, but this is the one that I came up with on the slide. So certainly plain language is, of course, about making sentences clear and easy to read. That's so important. But it's also about making documents user-friendly and easy to navigate. And I'll say in the work that I do, the training work that I do, a lot of times when clients engage us to come in and do plain language training, they're thinking about this stuff. They're thinking, I need an expert to come in and teach my team to make their sentences easier to read. This part, right, the user-friendly part, how to make your documents easy to navigate, they almost never ask for this, but when I get in and I see their work, it's so clear that they desperately need this part of plain language as well. And I'd say this often ends up becoming the kind of the most transformative and interesting part of those trainings that I do. So plain language also makes documents user-friendly and easy to navigate. And I love that plain language is pragmatic. We know that readers will not read every word that we write. Okay. In fact, many studies have shown maybe only about 20 to 28%, depending on what their goals are. So plain language helps you understand which 20% people are most likely to read so that you can organize and prioritize your efforts in accordance with your users' reading habits and preferences. So I love that because it doesn't feel like, a shot in the dark. It feels like we're taking actual information and we're, adjusting the documents accordingly. So this helps us make updates like adding white space, using bullet points, omitting repetitive words, and all of that helps make those documents more useful and easier to read. And sometimes plain language even means getting rid of the words entirely, since it's about communicating your message as quickly, easily, and thoroughly as possible through all the means available to you. Sometimes that means replacing text with an image or a graphic. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So plain language is used to do so many different things. And I know that you all could add, so many things to this list, but these are just some examples from the ClearMark submissions from last year. Plain language is used to I'm going to read them out loud because I think that this is really inspiring and it's nice to hear. Plain language is used to motivate people with high risk of lung cancer to get screened. I won't read them all out loud. Help cancer patients feel more in control of their treatment journey after diagnosis. Educate adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities about COVID-19 prevention, and on and on and on. And so I think that, when you look at a list like this, when the outcomes that you're working toward are this important, it's often motivation enough to ensure that your written communications around these topics are clear and easy to use. And I think it's pretty obvious, right, that plain language is great for external communications because of all of these things that we're trying to accomplish with our external audiences. But it's great for internal communications and communication with other professionals as well. And it's interesting to me how many practitioners I see who are completely bought into, using plain language for external audiences, but forget about using plain language in, let's say, emails with their colleagues or other types of internal communications, presentations. Sabrina was talking about those plain language slides that she works on and how satisfying that is. But I think sometimes we forget that those internal communications are opportunities for plain language as well. So I love this slide. Sabrina helped me with it. Some things that maybe are obvious to you, like infographics, consumer websites, application forms, but then there are other things that may not be as obvious to you, right? Meeting notes or internal memos, but all of these things are opportunities for plain language.
And then let me add also, study recruitment, because we're talking about how to use plain language in research, and I'd be interested in hearing maybe from others in terms of raising awareness in the community and building trust and study recruitment. And then, of course, informed consents and on-study communication. We're trying to engage more people in research. So I always think about plain language as always being transparent, which builds trust, also returning results back to the community. So there are lots of ways to include plain language in both the design of the research, but also then the communication of your interdisciplinary research groups. So lots of uses, as Grace said.
Yeah, and I see that comment there, George. He's just chiming in, Sabrina, on the study recruitment. Yeah, you've already seen some really dense consent forms. Yeah. Great opportunity for that. Okay, so another great thing about plain language, it's stickier, right? It's more memorable. So just take a second to kind of read through this before and after on the slide. Now, I understand that I'm a literature person through and through. I was like a triple English major, so of course it makes sense that I cannot get through the one on the left. But even if you are a person who can easily read the one on the left, I'm guessing you would agree that the version on the right is more memorable. It's something that you'll remember tomorrow. You may not remember, I can't even pronounce the words on the left side, the zygomaticus major. You might not even remember that tomorrow, but people like and trust things that are easy. Yeah, I'm gonna remember that one. Oh, thank you for putting that link in the chat, Sabrina. I want to look at that. That looks great. All right, and then another one. Which one will connect with study participants? The one on the left or the one on the right? And if you just read through them really briefly, you'll immediately have a strong opinion on that. So using you to speak directly to your audience is one of my favorite plain language techniques. It's really simple, but it's really powerful. And I love to use that technique. All right, so I want to give you all a chance to get your wheels turning. They probably already are. But we wanted to ask you this question. What is something specific that you would like your audience, your study participants, your stakeholders, clients, or customers to do? What is something that you would like one of your audiences to do? Think about that and put it in the chat box.
Yes, and let us know who your audience is.
Yes. Yes, please.
I'm wondering who is using plain language now in their research. Because some of us are doing research on plain language, and some of us are using plain language in our research to create easy to read informed consent forms, or to create those disseminating results pages or plain language summaries.
Yeah.
Really to fund your study, Valerie, talking about internal communication, right? If you're writing a proposal, you're writing it to people who are not scientists, not health literacy experts, and needing to really write in plain language for that audience. Another great point, that what is plain language? It really depends on who your audience is. So thank you for that comment.
Oh, Marianne, I feel this one on like a spiritual level. Yeah, convincing colleagues that plain language is not dumbing down the content. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, making the case for using plain language. I mean, to be honest, that's one of the best uses of readability formulas, which, right, okay, they've got their limitations clearly, but it really makes a big impression when you say, I just assessed 10 of our diabetes education materials, and they're all written at the 12th grade reading level or below, or the 15th grade reading level. It does make an impression, and then you can go from there in terms of explaining exactly what is plain language and that everybody benefits from it. Okay, Katie's talking about our team is funded by the CTSA, yes, to provide plain language editing to investigators to help them engage research participants. Great. Really interested in and maybe back in the chat, like, you know, are your services well used? Do you get a lot of requests? I know that librarians started offering that kind of service for patient education materials and have gotten, you know, that's a very, very strong part of what some folks do.
Yeah, and I'll say, Alex, I love your example here. You want your audience to take steps, very specific steps to protect themselves from infectious diseases. I love how tangible. We would really also like all of your your audience members to take those steps.
Marianne just called me out. Yes, what is a CTSA? Avoiding abbreviations and acronyms. So I know that I work for the Center for Translational Research and Sciences. It's not exactly CTSA, but they're all kind of associated. So Katie, you can respond there. Yeah, thank you.
That's great. So the point that I want to make by asking you to do this is that what plain language asks, and I think that this is helpful. This is a helpful way to put it for skeptics of plain language, right? The people who you have to kind of like work really hard to convince of the value of plain language. Plain language asks, are you making it easier or harder for your audience to take that step. And so I think that that's something that anyone can understand, right? Of course, if we have something that we want our audiences to do, then we want to do everything in our power to make it easier for them to do that thing, or more likely that they'll do that thing. So that might be a little bit of help when you're trying to convince someone else. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, plain language is asking, are you making it easier or harder for your audience to take the step that you want them to take, to do the thing that it is that you want them to do? And, when you communicate to people in the ways that they can understand, it's easier for them to take action. And so I think, reducing the barriers to comprehension, or the effort required to comprehend something, even for highly literate, highly, educated, motivated audiences, that helps the information sink in, helps them act on it quicker. The less brain power they have to expend trying to understand something, the more they can expend on actually doing the thing, right? And so another thing I love about plain language is that it is not a matter of taste or subjective style, right? It's not just about someone's personal preferences. And I have to be honest, this is something that I constantly have to remind the teams I do training with, that plain language is not about your personal preferences. And that's actually, I think this is interesting. That's actually why we get brought in to do a lot of training, is that different people use different definitions of plain language to justify their own way of doing things. Okay. But plain language, first of all, must be testable. If it's plain language, you can test it. If it's not testable, it's not plain language. And plain language focuses on user testing content before it's published, which means we're not guessing what will work. We ask. We find out. It's much easier to change your text or your design before it's been published, right? When it's on a whiteboard or on a Word doc, than as it says on the screen when it's coded into an interface. So it's not about personal preferences. It's about testing and making sure, finding out, asking if it actually works for the audience. And so this is, exactly what Sabrina was just talking about. Of course, readability, grade level, all of that, it has its limitations. We're all familiar with that. We're aware of that. But especially when you're trying to persuade other people of the value of using plain language, and trying to demonstrate that it is not a subjective thing. It's not just about some personal stylistic preference, right? It's very helpful to pull in text metrics like these. Words per sentence, syllables per word, grade level, all of those great text metrics. And data from eye tracking studies, right, really helps us objectively measure how usable, our writing will be, our documents will be for our readers. Okay, and then of course, there are subjective, human-focused methods for testing your content. Usability testing is a critical element of plain language, and it can become very elaborate. Labs with glass and eye tracking and focus groups, there are really, elaborate and complex ways of doing user testing. But, we love teaching teams about, for example, paraphrase testing, because it's a type of user testing that you and one other human can do for free. So there are so many options for testing your content, no matter what it is, no matter who your users are, no matter how much budget you have. But again, for something to be plain language, it's got to be testable, and you've got to get feedback on if it works for your audience. Okay, and that brings us to our activity. Sabrina, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, so thank you. So we've been talking about something very pressing in terms of the plain language, people who do plain language writing, the plain language movement, I guess you could say, which is around how is AI, impacting our work? What is the impact it's going to have? So I thought this would be, or we thought this would be a great place to have discussion. I'm going to be putting a couple of examples of some. One is an abstract, an abstract that we asked AI to write a plain language summary for, and you'll get to see a couple of examples of how what AI did with it. The other example that you'll get to look at is a paragraph on a rare disease that I asked AI to write this at the 7th grade reading level, or write this easy to read, and you'll get a chance to look at look at it. So be sure to introduce yourself to each other. I'm going to put these in the chat box, these two examples. You're welcome to look at one of them or both of them, depending. Be sure that there's somebody who's someone should be able to share their screen in your group, Mario, or the Institute for Healthcare Advancement. Maybe you can be sure that folks can share their screens for this discussion. So what I'm going to do is, let's see, we should have, I'm going to go with 6 rooms. So maybe we'll have about 5 people in each room. You'll have about 15 minutes to talk, and then we'll have 15 minutes to talk as a group. So folks will be able to kind of report back from your small groups, and let us know what your conversation was around AI. Have you used AI? So keep it open, keep it an open discussion. These are 2 examples just to kind of help things along. Any questions you have, put them in the chat box. Grace and I will be here in the big room, so you're welcome to come back and ask us anything. I think you can also raise your hand and we'll be able to jump into your room. So get to know each other, talk about your plain language work, and especially your concerns or your practice around using AI, artificial intelligence. If you do any Googling, you're already using AI. Every time you ask a question in Google, that you are using AI. So we're all using it in all kinds of ways that we don't even know. So I think with that, I'm going to open the groups, and you will get kind of thrown in your group, get to know who you're with, and then come on back after your discussion, and we'll have a larger discussion. Grace, we should come back into the main room. I'm not sure if we'll get thrown into the main room or into small rooms or not.
Yeah, I just said not now to my invite.
Okay, great.
Okay.
No, I don't think I got an invite. So
Is that you're
maybe
unassigned?
because I set it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, great. Right. Folks should, these rooms take a while to get set up. Or some people might be on phones and they might not be joined. Yeah. Sure. But anyway, we've got, group 1 has 1 person in it. So maybe I should move them.
We look okay.
Oh, no,
So,
group 1, I see. There are 3 people in group 1, 4 people in group 2. Great.
Yep.
2 people in group 4, that's fine. They'll get a chance to.
So I hit not now, but now I can, but I don't know how to do it, how to join now. Do I?
Okay,
I'll
let's
go
see.
to join breakout room. Okay, I can join it. All right.
there
I
you go,
might have
Mary.
to step in and out. That's the problem. Thanks.
Really fun.
Okay. All right, there goes Marianne. Very good.
Yep. And Diana and Misty, if you have any issues, let us know. It's
Great.
good that we've got at least 3 people in each room, so that's good, who are
Yes.
actually there. So that's great.
And we're right on time, which is good. Again, Diana and Misty, I don't know if you're having trouble joining, or can let us know.
Ooh, did you
The
set the?
time,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
set the timing for 15 minutes,
Yep, perfect.
and then we'll have 15 minutes to talk.
That's great.
Yeah. No, I think some people like to talk in the small groups. Almost everyone loves that. And then we'll have the larger group.
Yep.
Discuss.
I'm really
Okay.
excited to see what people say.
5 is 2 people. I don't know if someone jumped out of there.
Oh, yeah.
I think I can send a message. I'm just going to say you're welcome to rejoin the main room whenever, you know, you want.
If you're done sooner than 15
Right.
minutes or something, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna send that out. All right, great. You're welcome to rejoin the main room. If you are done with your discussions, okay. Okay, I'm gonna send it. There we go.
Nice. Yeah, it looks like we lost Diana, which is all
Oh,
right.
she might rejoin.
She might have been the one in room 5 since we
Oh, okay.
were in that room.
Okay, good. No, the groups are 4, 3, 4. Good. That's good.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, I feel lonely. I hope people come back early.
I bet some of them will.
So when we do have the discussion, you can, if you want to close the slides and we can just put it on, everyone can have it on, I don't know if standard or
Yeah, I'll go ahead and stop.
gallery view.
Yep. And then
Yeah,
and
great.
and what I can do is since we have a discussion question, I can put it in I just copied it off the slide and I'll just put it in the chat so they can
Okay,
see
great.
that and reference it. Does that work?
Yep, sounds good. And I can, even when they come out of their groups, I'll still be able to see who was in the group. So I can say, oh, group 1, George, Katie, you want to report back on some of your discussion.
Yep, that's great. Wow, we did here's Alex. Alex is back.
Oh, Alex may have gotten thrown out.
Okay. Alex, do you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, I think I was in group 2. I think I don't know, maybe it was on my end. Feel free to resend me if you want. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Can I resend you? You got thrown out.
You might be able to go back and manually join again, Alex, if you go.
Oh, yes. Okay, I think I can.
Okay.
Okay, great. Oh, and here's Sandy.
Hi,
Hello,
Sadie.
Sandy. Oh, Sadie.
How are you?
Hi.
Sorry, I was
Good.
teaching and just jumped into this one, so I don't know where we're at.
Oh, okay. No, we're in small groups, having a discussion about our plain language work and artificial intelligence or AI. And there are a couple of examples if people wanted to look at it, but we're going with the small group discussion and then we'll have a large group discussion. Let me see. Oh, I can assign you to a group. So I'm going to put you in group 5, if you don't mind.
Fine.
Introduce yourself and just say, here I am. I want to join your discussion.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Great. We'll see you in a bit.
Thanks.
Okay, great.
Oh, and here's Monique.
We may be getting some folks, that split their time. Hi, Monique. Oh.
And
Okay. I think.
And they've got about 7 minutes left. Perfect.
Oh, Alex went back to room 2, so I don't know.
Well, great. She's in a room.
Yeah. And room 5 Sadie went to 5.
Mm.
That's
perfect. Well, Sabrina, I'm impressed with our timing. We really, we managed to hit that.
Right on time. I assume people are chatting and doing their thing.
Yeah, they would come back if they weren't.
Right, I did invite them to come back, so.
Yeah. You know, it probably takes everybody a little while just to say hello and, that kind of thing.
Right, right, you're right. I know whenever I do workshops, the breakout groups, people, that's their favorite thing.
Well, and what I've learned is that they get as much out of that as they do
Mm.
whatever the activity is a lot of times. And that was a lesson that I, had to learn through trial and error with a bunch of training, is that, like, especially working remotely, a lot of times, even colleagues, they don't get a lot of time, like FaceTime with each other,
Yeah.
um, and so I that's, yeah, people just like to have a chance to be able to chat. And so I also love that we didn't give them too rigid of an activity, just, a suggestion. And I think that's nice.
Yes, all right, so I do have, oh, some notes. So, I think I'll also, you know what, I didn't do it, I had to close the, close the files in order to share them, but
Sure.
so I kind of wanted to share them on my screen, but,
Mhm.
I had already closed them, but. I
Well, you
have
you
them
can open them
open.
now, right?
Now I can, yes. Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna see if I can share my screen. Oh, yeah, here's the rare diseases one.
I
All right,
can
I'd
see.
rather it be over here. Stop sharing. Let me see, try that again. Okay, you see the rare diseases one now? Okay,
Yes.
very good. And stop sharing. So this was the original paragraph that I was
Mhm.
given from
Mhm.
from my, the client.
Mhm.
And then this is what ChatGPT came up with when I said, make this paragraph easy to read. And this is what it came up with when I asked it to write this paragraph in 7th grade reading level. And it ended up not being 7th grade reading level. So okay.
Uh-huh. But that's such a great lesson too for folks, is like, trust but verify, right? Like, check your work.
Yes,
Basically.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then this is the plain language here. I'm just like readjusting my screen. This is the plain language summary, right? So this was the original abstract.
Mhm.
And now a lot of journals ask you to write a plain language summary. So this was the original one, write a plain language summary of this abstract. That's what I told it. And then I realized some journals give you a very specific word length. So then I said, write a 60-word plain language summary of this.
Mhm.
So one of the things I learned, and we'll talk about this, is that it kind of depends on what you ask it to do. Like, you have to figure out what's the right ask, I think. I'm wondering what other people say about that.
Yeah, prompt engineering as a whole, it's like their whole programs, graduate certificates and things like that on prompt engineering at this point. And so I think that's
Right.
interesting, is it's not just the stuff that the writing that ChatGPT is generating for you, it's the writing that you yourself have to do to get ChatGPT to generate something good for you. And this is
Yeah.
probably deja vu. Maybe I've already said this to you before. We've already talked about this, but I think that's one of the reasons when people want to use it, because they think it's a big time saver. I
Yeah.
have to, I have to talk to people about that a lot, where it's like, well, be realistic. Maybe it will save you time, but there are actually new tasks that you have to do to ensure that it's well written, that it's accurate, that you don't have to do if you just wrote it yourself to begin with. So take that into account and ask yourself, is this actually going to save me time?
Because you have to do that, the checking
Yeah. Yeah. And the prompting, right? And sometimes you have
and
to
the
try
prompting, right?
a few different prompts. You have to
Exactly.
read everything that it produces for you and decide if it, fits or not. And so I think people can actually end up wasting a lot of time using
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
Well, there's definitely a learning curve around
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
So there is another session on AI later today. I think the last session, which I'm going to attend. And I went and I looked at a session from last year, which was very focused on AI. And there was some interesting suggestions. There was a kind of a consulting group that presented and how they used AI. One was to just generate possible vocabulary, right? So what are the, I sometimes do, synonyms. Okay, that's one way to do, thesaurus, but to use it through AI. Another was, right, content creation, just starting from scratch. Another was tone for a specific audience, which I thought was really interesting. Like, write this for, teenager, at a teen audience, or write this for an older audience. Like, what language or tone would it come up with? And then the last suggestion was, to generate ideas for visuals. Even though AI is not very good with visuals. I think people are coming back.
Oh, we've got room 4 back.
Yes. Okay, great. Welcome back.
Hi, Megan, Tracy, and Marianne.
Yep, the other groups will be coming back. I think they're giving another 30 seconds.
Yep.
I'm really interested in hearing how other people are using AI, or have you used it? And then the prompt was also, to think about, there was a question around, I didn't read the prompt, but the prompt, I think, would you want to put that in the chat, which was to compare the two and then to consider what works and what doesn't, and to identify errors, omissions, or hallucinations. So that hallucinations, I picked that up from HARC last year. There was a panel on AI, and they talked about how sometimes it will make up references, it will make things up that did not come from the data. That's what they're calling from the information that you give it, that's called hallucinations. But certainly errors and omissions are a common issue. All right, are we pretty much back from the groups? I think there's one more group. Group 5 is still in discussion. Some folks are still coming back, but all right,
It says the rooms will close in 12 seconds. So
okay, then we'll have everybody. All right, I'm ready to dive right in.
We're almost there. 3, 2, 1. Now
go.
everybody should be coming back.
All right, well, welcome back, everyone. So we've closed the PowerPoint slides. If you want to put yourself on gallery, I always find that's a really useful view, so you can see everyone. And if you want to participate, you can put yourself on a video. It really does help us kind of see that you're active and with us, but you don't have to. So the prompt was to look at the two examples. You didn't necessarily have to. You could have just had a conversation about the AI work that you do, or how you use plain language, but to consider what works and what doesn't work with AI, and to identify errors, omissions, and hallucinations. And I was saying, I learned that last year from HARC when the panel talked about how sometimes AI does come up with hallucinations. They just make it up. It's not even in the source data. So how about I think it was group 4 that came back first. So maybe is there someone from group 4 that wants to just share kind of issues that were raised, and how you would like to discuss around AI work that you're concerned about or that you do? Was that Megan, Tracy, or Marianne? Anyone from that group want to say something? I think group 6 also came back early. Amin, Diane, Laura, Valerie. People are saying, I thought you looked, okay, this is a direct. All right. Joe is saying this was a really interesting presentation about AI and health communication. Oh, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Joe. Who would like to tell us what you did in your small group?
In our group, we realized,
Go ahead.
while it will simplify words, it doesn't worry about white space or bulleting or heading or anything. It just tries to simplify the words. So we actually brought up AI and tried to get it include bullet points. And so it just put the whole article in bullet points. So it was interesting.
And that's Diane, is that Diane, is that Diana? That was you that was just sharing?
Yeah, from group 6.
Okay, from group 6. Yeah, so it really is you only get the plain language aspect of plain language, not the plain language design. You get the plain language writing. I mean, it does use bullet points. And that was interesting that you asked it to use bullet points and it went crazy with the bullet points. I mean, I do see that it does kind of chunk sometimes. But I have heard that AI, and I haven't used it yet, but that you can query AI for examples of graphics that might be able to go with the text. It could give you suggestions for the graphics, but it's not quite very good yet at creating graphics. I don't know if anyone's tried to ask AI to create graphics, but it can get pretty crazy looking. Yes, Joe, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so actually that I posted that webinar in the chat, and that was actually one of the really cool things about that webinar is they used a few different AI tools. One was a research tool, and then they used a literature tool to kind of create a storyboard, and then they graphically designed a comic based off of that health research, which was really interesting to see. And the time frame in which they did it was way quicker than I would have ever imagined. This person is also a PhD and researches this stuff a bunch, but they said that they were able to create that in about 30 minutes. They were able to create a comic from research materials. It obviously is not perfect, and like we talked about in our group, things are moving very quickly, and it can get kind of scary because we also know that it sometimes makes up references. But I thought it was a really interesting utilization to take this research material and create a personal story and or like a potential connection to it, and does that help to change action, which is ultimately the most important part of that? Can they understand it and then take action on it, and does that personal and emotional connection to it drive that, and could AI be a tool to help with that?
Great. And Joe, where are you from, or can you give us just background?
Totally. I am a physical therapist by training, and I have recently moved on to a role of a patient education manager for a hospital system in Oregon. So I'm in central-ish Oregon, the coast of Oregon. But
great. And so that's patient education, doing plain language writing. I see that Aman was talking about ChatGPT creating some terrifying graphics. Yes, that's what I have heard. I mean, it's going to evolve over time, but that is something to be concerned about for the infographics. Oh, very interesting. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Do you want to say something about that? The use of...
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead. Yes.
So if you try to get ChatGPT to create like a comic or infographic, it knows how to section things off, but it's not going to have a command of the actual language. So it's going to make up words, misspell them. I just uploaded, the infographic that it created. So it's like, that's cool that it's like section things off beautifully. Like, this is what you can try to get Canva to like design. But then, not everything makes sense. Like, these are made up words. It's not some of it doesn't appear to be the English language. But it is kind of interesting that it had a nice format.
Yeah. So, people are thank you for sharing that. And I do think that the graphics is kind of the next big thing, breakthrough. I must say that there's been a lot of concern that AI is going to take over plain language and we won't be necessary. It is, I can't imagine. I mean, it's a tool, and then we can use that tool, and there's lots of potential uses, like asking for it to do a first draft, but you still need to do, the correcting, look for omissions, be sure that it makes sense. looking for possible, like we use a thesaurus now, like what are some other words I would use for this? Another use potentially is like, oh, what would this sound like writing it for teenagers? You know, what might be the language? You know, what are some graphics to be used? I'll say one more thing, and then I'll ask Megan to speak. So in the examples that we gave, there was the research, right? The rare diseases, and you saw that there were some errors there, or that when it was asked to do at a certain grade level, it didn't really, achieve that. So, that it's a tool, but it's not necessarily going to take anyone's job. Megan, are you still with us? I saw your hand up, but now I'm not sure.
Oh, yes, I'm still here.
Go ahead.
So I was just going to say that was one thing we brought up in our group, was that you need to keep humans in the loop. Part of the reason I think that because there are certain skills, like you said, AI is a tool, and there are certain skill sets the person needs to have in order to use AI effectively. So it's like you need to understand principles of plain language to know when it's not giving it to you the right way, when it's not chunking it. But we also mentioned that some of the reason that it may have given the like results that it did, I think it has to do with the way the prompt was written. So the way you write the prompt does affect the way it gives you information. So if the prompt was written differently, it would have given out different information. It may have chunked it a little bit more and things like that, but you have to like write very specific prompts. And it's also like an iterative process. Like you write something and then like it gives you something and then you write something else to make it better. So it's like a tool you use to kind of help you do a better job. But there are certain principles the person still needs to understand in order to be able to use the tool effectively. But it can save you a lot of time. Kind of like Joe said, it can really, if you know how to use it right, it can save you a lot of time.
I think, Megan,
Go ahead, Grace.
that's what's so key is that it can save you a lot of time, but I also see a lot of people waste a lot of time using ChatGPT because they haven't figured out yet how to prompt well or or whatever, and so they end up using it as a tool, but it generates actually more work for them, more decisions they have to make, more steps in the process. And so I think that that's interesting. If your primary purpose to using it is to save time, yourself or your team time, there actually is a significant investment of time that you have to put into it in order to get to the part where it saves you time, which is, I think, really interesting.
So the prompt is absolutely true, figuring out how to ask it for what you want. And I see that we've just a few minutes, so I did want to raise the issue, and I think Danielle has already raised that these are large language models, right? And they take the information that humans have put out there on the internet and what we've generated in order to generate, right, the responses. And our biases are totally fed into the system now. And I'm not sure that will ever get corrected. I mean, it's there. I think it needs people to correct it. And I see that Danielle was talking about what it generates around, issues that there's morality, information that morality can ascribe to, that around sexual practices and mental health, people's biases and opinions and will come out. I don't know if Danielle, you want to kind of talk a little bit about that, but those are areas that I don't necessarily think that the technology will correct that. Humans will need to be aware and take care of that. Let's see, George was just talking about in your group. Documents are tools for establishing trust in a relationship. Are you saying might not be, George? It might not establish that trust if you don't let people know that AI was part of that process?
Well, that plus that these documents, it's not just about the readability of the information. It's about establishing the trust in the relationship. So that's an important point for these.
Very good point, and thank you for sharing that. And I see Aman also shared some examples of the AI generated images. I want to be careful of the time. I think we've pretty much come to the end of our time, Grace. I know that there's another session now. Maybe folks can share in the chat box before you leave, kind of a key point, maybe that something that made an impression on you from this discussion. Before you go, that would be really helpful, kind of as a closing comment. A little bit more than thank you. what key point are you leaving this workshop with? Does that work, Grace?
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Okay, well, again, thank you for joining us. I do believe there's an AI session at the end of today, so we can continue that conversation. And I'm sure we can bring up the question of plain language at that time again.
Yeah. And thank you, Diana, Alex, Aman. These are great takeaways. Thank you. Yeah, it's so helpful to see this.